Depression, one of the most controversial subjects, especially today, and it breaks my heart to see so many people suffering with it. But today I'm just going to give you the just certain tools and certain questions that I want you to start to research and to start to answer as well. So that's all it's going to be. It's about you answering the questions that I put into your mind, and you're going to really focus on them, and hopefully it should alleviate any depressive thoughts. And depression is, if we understand depression, from the NHS, they describe it as a psychological illness. However, depression, the word in the English dictionary, is described as feelings of severe despondency and dejection. Well, feelings, number one, let's understand the word because that's how it's defined, is feelings. Them feelings of despondency and dejection. Despondency and dejection just simply mean sadness, feeling low, low moods, feeling lonely, there's loneliness, feeling hopeless. That's all they mean. So for those who sort of don't understand despondency and dejection, that's all they are. So you have feelings of sadness, low moods, feeling hopelessness. So these are all feelings. So we have to understand, where feelings come from, number one. But we can attach the meanings to either of them. So we can either look at it from the NHS point of view, where we say it's a psychological illness, or we can look at it from the dictionary point of view, and which is defined as feelings of sadness. So feelings literally come from how you think. So you can't feel without thinking. I mean, people who meditate or who pray, they will tell you they still have to take themselves to a higher level of feelings, but they still have to block everything out of thoughts. But that's meditation. What I'm talking about in everyday life, we're having to think about our jobs. We're thinking about, we're fearful about going into jobs. We're fearful about, raising our kids in today's world. So we attach all these feelings and these emotions to depression. But ultimately what we want to understand is the science aspect, which I'm going to give you as well first, and then I'm going to give you the holistic approach, and then we want to try and combine the two, and we're trying to want to get the best alleviation for yourself. So the science aspect is, years ago they used to believe it was a chemical imbalance. Some still believe that is the case, but researchers, as science now has progressed from that. So in the beginning it was a serotonin imbalance, which is the feel-good, the happy chemical, which was out of balance. And then secondly, they came to realise that actually people weren't curing from taking antidepressants because serotonin weren't an imbalance with them. In fact, it was creating detrimental effects, and it was leading to suicidal thoughts and even death. So they sort of started to come up with new research, which then they mentioned the hippocampus, part of the brain that controls emotion and memory. So they realized that if the hippocampus had shrunk, which was smaller in people who suffered with depression, so the hippocampus was smaller in people who suffer with depression, and the hippocampus is larger in people who are generally more happier. That isn't the case now. Now there's new research as well, which states that you have sensory receptor cells, serotonin receptor cells, and it's passed on from mother and father. So if there's two cells, so you have one from the mother and you have one from the father, and you say these are the cells, and then what happens is you have a long one and you have a short one. Now, if there's two short ones, that means you're highly likely to suffer with depression. If there's a short and long one, then you're going to have episodes of depression. And then if there's two long ones, then genetically you're going to be a lot happier. So this is the research now. Now, you can use your common sense on this. I don't know how this sounds on camera, by the way, but you can use your common sense. That's like saying, I tell you what, your parents suffered with high cholesterol, let's say, or diabetes, or high blood pressure. Let's just talk about the lifestyle illnesses, which are so common as well. But that means, you're going to get it. There's a high chance that you're going to get it, but it doesn't mean you are going to get it, because If you followed what your parents did, then yes, there's a high chance that you can get it. But epigenetics now teaches us we can change the information in ourselves. So I just want you to have a think and start asking these questions in terms of what science has labelled as a psychological illness and where the research is going. Because to be honest, they don't actually know, because the brain is so complex that they haven't even studied it to the level to even understand it. I mean, universities and research now tell us we only use 10% of our brain. For most people, I would say you probably use about 4 to 5%, if that. So don't always take everything at face value. Start to do your own research and start to understand the human body. So that's the science aspect of it. Now I'm going to give you the holistic approach, okay? So the approach I use is I try and make people understand about depression. I would never say don't ever feel depression. There is the body can go into a depressed state where posturing closes, lack of confidence kicks in, hopelessness kicks in, feeling lonely kicks in. But the problem is emotions come from motion. So if we take the body into this state, we are naturally going to eventually feel quite low moods, lacking confidence. People who are depressed tend to talk a bit slower and more quiet, and they hate being around loud people who are confident and happy. So they tend to then spend their time more with people who are depressed. So what we want to understand is the fact that depression is feelings which come from thoughts. Them thoughts you're in complete control of, and I give people just a 2-minute exercise in which I bring them in here and I take them through a technique which I use, and it works every time because it completely goes against that this thing takes over them and they can't control it. It isn't actually the case. Now, if I was to say to you, here's a piece of fruit and it will give you temporary happiness, but it will lead to suicidal thoughts and even maybe death, would you consume that fruit from me? Probably not. But that's what most people are doing with these antidepressants, and they're creating detrimental effects, because now in January 2015 there was 1 million people on antidepressants. In 2016 it went to 2 million. Now in 2017 it's nearly 3 million. So you tell me, with scientific research and all these antidepressants, if this is helping people, or are they actually getting worse? So to me, the numbers, the results is what I go off on. If I'm not getting results with people, I need to change what I'm doing. But the results that these drugs are producing are not what people need. So we need to start questioning it a little bit, and we need to start understanding about our own bodies and our own health. So if we understand feelings, let's go back to the holistic approach now. We understand feelings. Now, most of you in a depressed state, you don't express. So the opposite of depression is expression. So we've got to learn to express our feelings, number one. And you are allowed to be sad. You're allowed to be, low in mood. You're allowed to feel these things. They're actually telling your body something, but only you can get yourself out of it. Now, I'll give you an example of how the mind is parallel to a story which, imagine, now take yourself on this journey yourself now. Imagine, because you're blessed with an imagination, so I want you to really engage with this story. Imagine a farmer who has a piece of land. Now, the land doesn't care what's planted in it. The farmer has the choice. Now, the land is your mind, okay? The farmer being you. So the land doesn't care what the farmer plants in it. Doesn't care. So the farmer decides to plant a poisonous plant, let's call it nightshade, and he on one part of the land, and then he plants some potatoes, let's say. He feeds them, he waters them, he loves them, and in return he gets an amazing bloom of both. Remember, the mind's exactly the same. You can put whatever you want to put in your mind, and it will give you in return exactly what you put into it. Okay, so it's just as parallel to the human mind. That's just how it works. It just the same with the body. The body doesn't care what you put in it, it'll still deal with it. This is why we're, now 70% of the population is obese, because of the choices in terms of what they're doing with it. The body doesn't care. The mind doesn't care. This is a choice that was given to you. So I want you to really think about the questions, and I want you to start questioning it and start reading up about it and do your own research. Okay, this is just an opinion, and this is the results I've produced with hundreds of people who have been in depression for, some of them 20 years, but they were never ever explained about depression. And also, if we are that amazing with research, then the results it's producing isn't actually this, you know, it doesn't really work with the results we want as individuals, because people don't like to be depressed. They don't want to be in this psychological illness, let's say. So what I want you to ask is, if I was to ask you a series of questions when mother and father dies, or your brother and sister die, let's say, or kids pass away, you're allowed to feel sad, you're allowed to grieve, but in today's world, we're not even allowed to feel anymore. So I want you to really start questioning it. And also, if someone who comes to me with depression, who came to me in a state of so-called depression and sadness, but their father passed away, compared to someone who's just split up from a marriage, the emotions, the chemicals from both are completely different. They're not the same chemical response. So number one, I can't remember the last time, if you go to a doctor and he scanned your brain or your digestion to see which chemical responses are off. So in general, they've done research on people, which isn't you, okay? You haven't had the research done on you. They haven't scanned your brain to find out which neurotransmissions are off, which chemical responses are off, but then they're giving you pills to say that it's serotonin. But remember, emotions, coming in with an emotion of sadness or grief or guilt or regret or envy or jealousy or, you know, anything, the emotions that get, the chemicals that get released are not the same. So this is what we have to understand. They never scanned your brain to find out which chemical was off. So really start to question and start to understand about health and the mind and the body, because in today's world, we weren't ever taught about feelings. You know, in schools or anything, we're not taught to express. We're not taught about the human body. We're not taught about health. So this was just a video I wanted to do on depression, and just to get the results for you. So I'm going to finish the video off and wrap it up, and I want you to start creating new habits for yourself. Okay, so to help with your depression, number one, look at your thought patterns. So what we want to do is, and sleeping habits and hydration habits and nutritional habits, because people who consume a lot of nutrition, stimulants, what we're doing is we're overexciting what's called the sympathetic nervous system. This creates a breakdown and it's a lot harder to heal. So always question, I always say one question, and it's concentrating, you know, ask yourself, how much water-rich foods have I consumed on a daily basis today? How much water-rich foods have I had today? How much water have I drunk today? This water is what's used to put out fires. And sometimes when the sympathetic nervous system is in a fired state, your brain is in a stressed, fired state, sometimes we need the water to put out the fire. And some of these are just drinking coffees and teas, and that's just adding to the fire. Okay, so that's number one. Number two is, I want you to look at sleep. So what I want you to do, I want you to start going to bed early, and I want you to wake up early. So number one, people who are generally in a depressed state, they go to bed late and they wake up late. So I want you to start to create new habits, and just do, you know, even if out of all these that I go through, even if you start off with just one, that's the key. We're just trying to create new habits, because it's very difficult. I always explain on how hard it is to change habits. So we don't want to focus on changing because you're on automatic pilot mode every single day. So these are habits you've created for years. So get up early, and I want you to just appreciate the sun, just appreciate nature. That's all I want you to do. You know, see the sun, it makes you feel good. We're in parallel with it on an energy level. It's a lot more powerful, by the way, but it gives us vitamin D, and people who, you know, are in warmer climates, they're generally happier. Okay, that's what statistics say. It's not coming from me. Thirdly, we want to start looking at those who have less than us, because most of today's society, as well as we conform and we follow what everyone else is doing, but we always want to live a life like everyone else, and that life wasn't given to us. So don't look at people who have more than you, look at people who have less than you, and appreciate what you've got. And thirdly, which comes down to gratitude. Start creating habits of gratitude, thankfulness, and every day, even if you just put a journal together at the end of the day, just get into a habit of writing, you know, 4 things or 5 things you were grateful for, and this will start highlighting all the things that you do have in your life instead of the things that you don't. I hope this helps, and go and check out the YouTube channels as well. Give us a like, if only from your heart, if you feel you want to give us a like, and share this video with someone else who you know that's in pain, suffering with depression, and just make them sort of answer the questions themselves, and let's start, helping one another and retrain our minds and start getting back homeostasis and balance back of our own health.